Hello, I'm Gahana Navya James, and I've secured All India Rank 6 in the UPSC Civil Service Examination 2022. This was a very unexpected result, though I was quite sure that I might have given a best performance. I was not very much confident about the rank or the results per se. But it was a very grateful moment whenever I saw the name on the list. I was very much happy and content. And at the same time, I also feel that this is also a result that can be motivating or inspiring to people who would prefer self-study as an option. So there are different methodologies and strategies that an aspirant could always adopt while preparing for this examination. Given the prestigious nature and the competitiveness of the examination, it is definitely true that there are different strategies that people or aspirants might use. So my strategy was quite concerned with self-study because I was also doing my research in international relations and politics. So it was a very exciting journey, and this was my second attempt at the examination. I gave my first attempt in 2021. So that was a time when I had just finished my post-graduation, and I could not clear the preliminary stage of the examination. And that was an eye-opener because it also prompted me to change my perspective and my attitude towards the examination and make sure that I approach it with a very open and inclusive mindset. For the preliminary examination, I did not rely on any mocks or any of the test papers that were given by any coaching institutions. Instead, what I prioritized was to make sure that I'm acquainted with the pattern of the questions. Therefore, the first source that I used, which was also most important for me, was the previous year question papers. So I do believe that it is the foundation upon which we'll have to base our preparation upon. So apart from that, I also did a lot of searches on the internet. So I would say that a combine of newspapers as well as some websites, and websites in the sense websites which were also connected to newspapers in the sense e-paper and digital newspapers. And additionally, I also referred to some of the very interesting articles which I would come across on different platforms, scholarly platforms in particular. But for prelims, I had to make it more streamlined. And for that, I would say my top source was newspapers. So whenever I would encounter a keyword or a term that I would come across in a newspaper, I used to connect it to, I would say I would search it on the internet and I would acquaint myself with those terms, and I would also try to link it with the previous year question papers. Particularly have a very comprehensive book list, though I had come across a lot of book lists which were often used by aspirants and also people who have cleared it. I did not stick on to a particular rigid book list. Instead, I was more acquainted with what was more familiar to me, because being a humanities and social sciences student, I would I had gone across the NCRTs while I was in class 11 and 12, because I had opted for social sciences and humanities while I was doing my class 11 and 12. So I was quite confident that I'll be able to recall those from the NCRTs. So therefore, I did not revise or reread the NCRTs during my preparation. And additionally, I also refer to the newspapers which were already being subscribed to since I was very young. So these included a regional newspaper from Kerala, which I was reading. And additionally, I also used to read multiple newspapers in the English language and in different forms like e-papers as well as in the physical form. My resources for GS papers were mostly based on the syllabus, and I prepared some of the, I would say, some ideas or snippets upon the keywords that were given in the syllabus. And additionally, I feel that my prior knowledge in the subjects, particularly in the fields of polity, constitution, since I was also a postgraduate in political science, I was more acquainted with the subjects of polity and constitution. Therefore, I did not have a particular strategy to prepare GS2. And for GS1, I'm also a bachelor's in history. Therefore, I feel that my studies and my encounter with the subject during my undergraduation would have come in handy there. And for GS3, I would say that economics was one of my favorite subjects since I was in school. So I had a kind of a prior knowledge in the field of economics. I was also following economic developments. But for science and technology, I would say that it is one of the most updated and tricky parts. So I did not have a very solid strategy for science and technology. Instead, I relied upon online sources, and also I followed newspapers. And for GS4, I would say that it is most important that we have a very strong ethical compass and also have a set of values. So that is more than enough to understand the very nature of the question, because it is also a very reflective paper where your ethical skills are put into test. Moving on to the main strategy, the four GS papers, the general studies papers, as well as the essay and also the optional papers. I was very much interested in descriptive answer writing since I had acquainted the spirit of answer writing since I was more inclined towards social sciences, and also in my college and during my university days, and while I'm also still doing my PhD. So I was more acquainted with descriptive answer writing strategies, and I'm also a person who loves to write answers. Therefore, I was quite confident that it would be more apposite for me to keep myself updated with things rather than writing down the answers. So what I did was I did not subscribe to any particular test series or any particular answer writing series. Instead, what I did was to go through the previous year question papers, and I tried to make some answer frames for questions which were being asked. And I did a self-examination and a self-correction to just check whether I was able to include multiple points and dimensions. So that was what I did on the primary level. And apart from that, I would say that for the mains, it is more important that you also work on your speed and also in the writing speed as well as your writing skills. So that is also very much apposite and required. So I would often, I feel that if someone is an aspirant is facing an issue with respect to their writing speed, you can work out by just writing answers and making sure that you stick on to the time. My priority was to finish the paper, so that was my first goal while I was giving in the mains. And I felt that if I would be able to finish the paper, then that would be one of the greatest pillars of the strength and confidence. Therefore, I was also happy that I was able to answer all the questions of the mains examination. So that might also be a good strategy, because you might also have to make sure that you balance your knowledge with the time that is also required. For the mains answer writing, there are a lot of resources that are available online, which are also, some of them are all like free encyclopedias, or you can also use some of the open access websites which are there. So there are some other content building strategies that one could also use. In my case, I had a prior background, I would say, in the field of social sciences. Particularly, my experiences in undergraduation and post-graduation learning. So that added to my answer building strategy. So therefore, those were some of the base upon which I actually built up the mains answer writing. Coming to the schedule of my studies, I would say that I did not have a very rigid or fixed schedule for the UPSC preparation journey as well, because I was enrolled in my research. I was trying to balance the inputs that I was giving in for my PhD. I'm doing my PhD in international relations and politics, and at the same time, I also was trying to make sure that I do not remain cut off from the social world as well as from the daily developments that are happening in our world. So it was very important that we prioritize and balance all of the activities and domains which are also important to us. So I was quite assured of the fact that if I remain confined away from the engagements that are usually there in my life, then that would be a disadvantage to me at large. Therefore, what I did was to make sure that I'm more acquainted with the daily activities that I was doing. So I did not have any particular fixed schedule. whenever I would be interested to study, I definitely felt that I would give my maximum there. So on a productive day, I did not measure it in terms of hours, but in terms of the quality as well as in terms of the output that was there. So whenever I was interested, whenever I felt that there would be it would be more flexible a day, then I would definitely prioritize that day for UPSC preparation. Otherwise, what was more important for me was to keep a balance between all the activities where I was involved in. At the same time, during my post graduation as well as my undergraduation, and right away from my school days, I was very much interested in co curricular activities, which are also non academic in nature. So I found time in making sure that I do not miss out on those areas as well. Additionally, I also took some intermittent breaks to make sure that I remain acquainted with the developments in my favorite areas, including films and music. So it was very important to keep a very balanced and holistic lifestyle while you're preparing for civil services or for any competitive examination. So that was my way of doing the journey, and I'm definitely sure that all the aspirants might have different strategies, and it is very important to understand and comprehend that each person will have their own contextual underpinnings and strategies, their own conditions in their life journey. So please comprehend your situation and try to frame your schedule accordingly rather than adopting a very one size fits all approach. So try to make sure that what matters to you or what is very important to you must not be sacrificed at all. Like if you are a person who is very much interested in sports or filmmaking, or you have any other passionate activities, it is also very much important that you keep those activities and hobbies alive. As far as note making is concerned, I would say that it is very important that you have a concise and crisp strategy while you are approaching the examination. Therefore, my approach to the exam was to make sure that I keep a tab of the important aspects. By that was more like a mixed way of doing things. Sometimes I would just note it down as a very brief or a very precise briefing of a particular subject. Or sometimes I would take a screenshot of what mattered or what was very much important or pivotal. So it was a mix of both the offline and online mode. However, I felt that my notes were not very comprehensive, because rather than making notes, I felt that it was more important to keep and revise and recall all the things that we have studied so far. So I did a self-study for UPSC examination. That was the result of a contemplation that I felt that self-study would work for me, because I was having several other engagements while I was also preparing for this. Particularly, I was also doing my research. Therefore, I felt that in order to balance the time schedule, that would be better in my case. At the same time, I would definitely say for adopting a strategy of self-study or going to an institution, it would be very much important that an aspirant analyze their background as well as their situations, as well as the challenges that they might face while opting for a particular path. So if a person is very confident that there would not be a requirement of an institutional support, then it is absolutely fine to have self-study, because this is what I would have to say from my side. But if someone feels that an institutional support is necessary, that is also fine, because that would be one of the strategies that could also lead to a success in this examination. So before adopting a strategy of self-study or an institutionalized or taking up a coaching or any other assistance, it is more important that we understand and reflect upon our situations, our conditions, as well as whether we are better in learning at our own pace, or whether we are better in learning in a classroom or a setting of a classroom, or you are better in learning in an offline or online mode. So that is something that one can understand by analyzing one's own condition and environment. So that is my suggestion to all the aspirants out there. Definitely, self-study will have its own challenges, given the fact that sometimes you might be feeling a bit low with respect to the output that you might be getting, or with respect to the input that you might be putting it. So it's very important that you remain motivated and optimistic throughout the course of this journey. I was very much fond of writing essays because I'm a person who used to take part in essay writing competitions since I was in school. So therefore, I did not feel that it would come up as a challenge during the mains examination. Instead, I was very much excited about writing the essay paper. It is true that there are different types of questions that might be put in the essay paper, including questions which might be philosophical and theoretical. And I always wanted to write essays that are more theoretical and philosophical in nature. Therefore, it did not prop up as a challenge for me. But those students or aspirants who are confronting a challenge in writing essay, I would definitely suggest that they go through the previous year question papers and understand the patterns of questions that are being asked for the examination. And at the same time, you can also take some time out to write and practice an essay to make sure that you stick on to the time and that you're able to brainstorm it well. So I believe that brainstorming and formulating a very broad framework of an essay is very much important. As far as current affairs is concerned, I was more concerned, or I was more I was given importance to newspapers as the sole, or I would say the primary source of information. Since I was a young kid, I started to read newspapers, and that habit of mine and the association of mine in newspapers actually went a long way, and that became a part of my lifestyle as well. Therefore, newspapers were the primary source of my information as far as current affairs is concerned. However, at the same time, I also made sure that I'm able to recall the news. And for that, what I did was I would often save or take a screenshot or just take a picture of the important news articles or important write-ups that would come in the newspaper. But that was not a very rigid or a daily activity that I did. But whenever I would encounter something that was very key and pivotal, then I would just make sure that I bookmark it, or I save it, or I even download it, or take a picture of that. So newspapers, I believe, could be the robust source for preparing current affairs. And definitely, if someone wants to diversify and make sure that they are also having a very inclusive way of looking at current affairs, then compilations could also be used. However, due to paucity of time, in my case, I could not delve into compilations as well. Economics, as well as union budget, as well as the economic survey, these are also concerned as the key areas as well as the key sources which could be used, or which could be used as the guiding points for your preparation. So what I did was to make sure that I read these documents very carefully. However, more than reading it from in a very comprehensive manner, what I did was to make sure that I also went through the official highlights of the economic survey as well as the union budget, which would be published by the PIB. So that was a very public document, and it is also an official document. Therefore, it is also very much credible. And I went through the official highlights, and also I went through the official executive summary of these documents as well. So that made me more confident while approaching economics as well as the aspects of current developments in the fields of economics of our country as well. My optional for the civil services examination was political science and international relations. While choosing the optional, what I gave the most importance was that whether I would be having an interest in my optional. I was quite sure that PSIR would be the answer because I was a postgraduate in political science, and currently I'm also doing my PhD in international relations and politics. Therefore, it came in as a natural answer to me that PSIR would be my optional. For the preparation of my optional, I relied upon the knowledge as well as the sources and the resources that I gathered and that I went through, that I browsed through while I was doing my post graduation. So that came in handy. Apart from that, I did not do a very tailor-made, or I would say a very specific preparation for the UPSC Civil Services optional paper. Instead, what I gave importance was to the syllabus of our optional paper. So that is very much vast and very dynamic, and at the same time, it's very interesting. So I tried to go through the keywords of the optional syllabus, particularly some of the portions which I found very much tricky, including I wanted to make sure that I also remain very much updated with the current developments of the aspects of law as well as the aspects of constitution. So for that, I try to integrate my optional preparation with the preparation of the GS papers, particularly GS2. So apart from that, my sole source for preparing the optional papers was the experience or the knowledge base that I garnered while I was doing my post graduation. I would say that interview is one of the most exciting parts of the whole UPSC journey, and it is also a personality test. So it's very important that you remain true to yourself while attending the UPSC interview. As far as I can remember, and I can speak about the UPSC interview experience, it was a very exciting one. And at the same time, the questions were more based on my domain, particularly on the fields of international relations, as well as international economics and geopolitics. So I was quite excited and happy in giving the answers. And I was also asked about AI and as well as science and technology and the fields of economy and how does the link between AI and job market would operate. So it was a very exciting and it was a very happy journey for me. And I was also happy after giving the UPSC Civil Services interview. And my suggestion to all the aspirants would be to make sure that you remain true to yourself. So it is also very much important that one does not lose the true spirit of the personality. So I did not opt for any mock interviews before going on for the personality test. Instead, I was having small guided conversations with my younger brother. So we tried to discuss and we tried to brainstorm on the issues as well as on different policies and also the developments that were happening on different domains. So, and we tried to have some discussions and deliberations on that. I would say that forming an opinion is the most important aspect as far as the UPSC Civil Services personality test is concerned. Since I did not give any mock interviews, my strategy was to make sure that I remain composed and that I remain very much inclusive and open to answering throughout the process of interview because it's also a personality test. Therefore, it's very important that you're able to balance your knowledge with the soft skills as well as with your communication skills and also remain composed throughout the journey. So for that, it is very important that you remain self-reflexive and at the same time try to understand yourself better and also form an opinion on different issues and try to augment your perspective and try to broaden it by diversifying it, by integrating different viewpoints and perspectives into your answers. So that's what matters more. And instead of having a very stressed or having a very, I would say, a negative or a pessimistic mindset, be very much confident and calm throughout the process. The journey is very exciting while you're preparing for the UPSC Civil Services examination. It's a very exciting journey, but there might also be challenges that might come up. So it is very important that one tries to understand your strengths and weaknesses before venturing into studies or before trying to opt for an examination. I would say that it is very much important that you have an optimistic mindset while approaching this whole journey. It is sure that it's a very unpredictable journey because there are highs and lows. There are a lot of unexpected turns that the examination or your journey might take. So be very much prepared to accept it and try to understand failures as I would say one of the strongest pushing forces that might push you further to move closer to your goals. So I can reiterate my example for that. So I was not able to clear the prelims in my first attempt, and in my second attempt, I became more confident of approaching the examination with a very open mindset and making sure that the inhibiting factors are kept at bay while coming to the exam hall. So approach the examination with a very open mindset and leave the rest to the process, and at the same time be very much confident in your skill sets. That's what I can tell to all the aspirants out there. Thank you so much for listening to me on Delhi Knowledge Track. And at the same time, I would urge all the aspirants out there to remain confident and also to remain very much interested in whatever you learn, whatever fields that you might want to venture into. And most importantly, do not lose hold of your co-curriculars as well as your non-academic interests. Pursue your hobbies because that would also come in handy at any point of time in your life. So remain very much active, dynamic, and confident throughout this journey. Thank you so much.